Welcome back to your favorite podcast. It's The Five Spot. I'm your host, Donovan McNabb, joined with Armando Segura, and we have some interesting news. A big game went on last night with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Seattle Seahawks, minus Geno Smith. Drew Lock was a starting quarterback. He was told pretty much a couple hours before the game that I was told. Jalen Hurts, who flew into Seattle on a different plane than the team, due to sickness, end up playing. And the Philadelphia Eagles look like the team that we've seen over the last couple weeks. Can't start fast, just was not consistent, found themselves on the sideline, generated some points, but only 17 points for the game. And then defensively, made a switch to go with Matt Patricia as the defensive coordinator and the play caller. Decided to go a lot of more man than I expected to see from this football team that struggles with their linebacking core and safety positions, being able to cover the right way versus a lot of teams that have strong tight ends, running backs are involved in their offense, as well as slot receivers that are a major part of their passing game. But ended up giving up a 92-yard drive to Drew Lock to win the football game. Armando, to me, when you watch this game, and I kind of get a feel of where you're going to go with this, was this more of Pete Carroll and his ability to manipulate things on the offense and defensive side and get kind of the best out of his football team? Was this the Philadelphia Eagles team that's starting to kind of go downward toward the end of the season?
Well, just right off the top, once again, you have bitterly disappointed me. Just terrible. I thought you were going to start the show with Western Kentucky versus Old Dominion in the Toastery Bowl, a game that went into overtime. And I
think it was it triple overtime or double overtime?
Oh, you're extending the joke. I don't know, dude.
Come on. See, I got you. Yes.
I have no idea.
I'm on it, Armando. Let's go.
Brother, if you asked me what Old Dominion's nickname is, I couldn't tell you. It's like, I mean, come on. I don't know. I don't know where Old Dominion is. And where, by the way, is New Dominion? I just people want to know, where is New Dominion? Yeah, so that game last night,
yeah.
There's a lot to unpack, but let's give Philadelphia Eagles fans who watch this a shining sliver of bright light, because trust me, they need it right now. So I'm looking at the final 3 games of the season, and the Eagles, the last 3 games of the season, I believe, play the Giants twice.
Yes.
Who else do they play? Hold on a minute. Let me see. I know that their schedule is much better than the Dallas Cowboys. And correct. At this point, they play the Cardinals in the other game. So they play a home and home with the Giants and then the Cardinals. The Cowboys have to play the Dolphins.
Right.
They have to play, obviously, hold on a minute.
And your favorite at the end of the season, the Commanders.
Wow. Yeah, who have already packed their clubs and are ready to go. And they have to play the Lions, a good team. Right. So the Cowboys have a much more difficult road, I would say to you, than what the Eagles have at the end of the season. They play at the Dolphins, the Lions, and then the gimme at the Commanders. But any game that Dallas plays on the road, which is at the Commanders, it's a rough game for them because they're a bad team on the road. So while the Cowboys right now lead the division, I would say to you that the Eagles have a very good shot of still winning the division. and getting a home game in the playoffs, which they need because that is a team that is reeling.
So Armando, let me ask you this: what are you seeing from the Philadelphia Eagles that really puts things in question toward the end of the season? Is it more of the health of Jalen Hurts, or is it the inability to pass the football and run the football and be more balanced on offense?
Well, I think the defense sucks.
Well,
Um,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that part. But just let's we'll definitely get to that point. But let's talk more of the offense because everything that we seen last year, it seems like everything worked. They were low in turnovers. They were healthy. Offensively, they had the explosion with Devontae and AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert started emerging. Jalen Hurts was using his legs. The running game was a little bit, it was more 60-40, I would say, with the football team. Obviously, they lose their coordinator to the Indianapolis Colts, but what are you not seeing from this football team that's kind of leading into these bad results that we see?
You're not going to like the answer.
Well, I mean, they need to hear it.
The answer is number one, their running game isn't that good, and number two, Jalen Hurts isn't the same guy that he was last year,
Right.
At his height, and I don't know why. I don't know, like you mentioned it. I don't know if he's hurting. It doesn't look like last night he was hurting. It just looks like he was bad last night. He threw a touchdown pass. He had 2 interceptions in the last in his 4 losses this year. 2 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. Actually, last night he didn't throw a touchdown pass. Forgive me.
Right, he ran one.
Right, exactly. He's not the same guy. He's not Mr. Dynamo. He's not, and I get it. He was sick. He flew on a private, I was going to say on a private yacht. He flew on a private jet, and to not infect the rest of the team. Dude, the offensive line is stable. That's not it, right? They're playing well. The wide receivers are outstanding. They are. They're just very good. But the play dealing quarterback isn't getting it to them on time. And something's not right. And he's making bad decisions, which
when I watch Jalen play, he's taking more shots than we've seen over the years. Now, a lot of times he's over trusting his receivers, which obviously trying to overfeed again AJ Brown. But I understand taking a one-on-one matchup, but there's something to be said that when you need 4 to 5 yards, hit the check down or hit the shallow cross that's running wide open. Again, when I watch him play, he looks comfortable in the pocket, but it seems like I would say he's over-reading. Sometimes, you get your pre-snap read, then you get your post-snap read. You go through your progression. You have time. You're able to go through 3, 4. You have a little bit more time. You may go back to 1 or 2. Then you have to decide to take off. When I watched him last night, he had 13 rushes, I believe. I look at this offense and I say, if your quarterback is not on time and he's sick, run the football. Run the football, run screens, get the quick game going, because they were giving them those slants and they were giving them those quick hitches. Take those and then methodically move the ball down the field. When I watch this football team over the last couple of weeks, it's not that they're taking things that are given to them. It's almost like we're trying to create the explosive play instead of allowing the explosive play to happen. And I've always been a kind of an advocate for DeAndre Swift. Run the football. Give the football to DeAndre Swift. Let him run the football, get about 4 yards a pop, get Gainwell in there, let him run the football, run some screens, get your tight ends involved. And it just hasn't been consistent enough in the last 2 months. I would say 2.5 months, where they were able to fight back on a lot of games. And now it's kind of haunted them in these last 3 weeks versus good teams and teams that you'll probably see in the playoffs. And so I just think for the Philadelphia Eagles, in order for them to change on offense, that's the mentality they have to have. And Nick Sirianni talked about it before the Dallas game. We're going to run the football more. But you really haven't. You run it with Jalen. And so I just think for this football team offensively to get on track, they got to be a little bit more balanced and utilize the quick and intermediate game instead of trying to create the double moves and big deep post crossing routes to try to create that explosive play, and just take what the defense is giving them.
And while we're focused on Jalen is focused on the commitment of his teammates. Right. Because after the game, he said that he doesn't think that the unit and the team is committed enough. And when I hear that a team that is fighting for a division, title and having to scratch and claw and in a rough spot because they've lost 2 previous games in a row, and then now they've lost 3 now, and has to defend its NFC championship from last year, that they're not committed enough according to the starting quarterback. I think that things
starting to unravel. Not saying they're starting to unravel. And I'm gonna tell you where that came. I'm gonna tell you where that came from. So I do Philly radio, every Monday. And so there was a message sent to one of the reporters from the so-called players that they were saying offensively they're predictable. They've become predictable offense. Now, this is not conversation that any player should be having with any media member, especially that's a beat writer or whatever that's writing about the organization or the team. 2, being predictable means you're calling plays that they're calling and they're expecting. That's not really happening too much in the NFL. You have to execute the plays. And then 3, to me, is that showing commitment? It possibly can. And I think what happens now, it wears on any quarterback because that's a question that he has to answer. Are you guys becoming predictable? Are the guys not happy with the play calling? How are you feeling about the first 15? Where basically, remember, his relationship with the old coordinator goes way beyond just in the NFL. Remember, his dad coached the offensive coordinator, I think, in high school. So he's known him for a long time. And so the commitment aspect, I understand why he said that, but that's bad timing for him to say that. That's bad timing for him to say
that. And what you're saying, let me piggyback on that, because we're talking about a team who spent the last week throwing its defensive coordinator under the bus.
Good transition.
Look, there are in the NFL, there are instances where a coordinator got fired or demoted in December, and that team went on to greatness. I recall that the Baltimore Ravens fired offensive coordinator Cam Cameron in December, gave the offense to Jim Caldwell, and they won the Super Bowl. So, I mean, let's not overblow this. Right. But the fact that Sean Desai is now sitting in the coach's booth, twiddling his thumbs with nothing to do because they took his play calling away as the defensive coordinator, which he still is. He's the defensive coordinator, except they've just chopped him off at let's say the knees. That's a bad look, man, that you've done. And now Matt Patricia is the defensive play caller. and he's the guy that's going man to man, man coverage on the final play when they give up the 39 yard winning touchdown with like 15 seconds to play. Huh?
Well, let's dissect this. Let's dissect this. Two things. Oh, and I'll ask you, where did Slay come from?
Where did Slay come from?
The trade.
Oh, I mean,
The
wasn't
Detroit
he?
Lions.
Yeah.
Who was the head coach of the Detroit Lions?
Yeah.
There was beef and rift supposedly between the two. So did Slay play in that game against
No,
Seattle?
he
He
didn't.
decided to have his procedure on his knee the week Patricia stepped in as the D coordinator. Aha! Aha! And so when you watch that game, and it's funny because this goes back to last season. Bradbury has not been playing well, and when I watch Bradbury play, he's a big size corner, not the physical man to man guy. He's more, I think he's better comfortable as an off corner man, kind of a corner as you've seen, but doesn't flip his hips great. The speed of top end speed isn't there. And watching that Seattle game, where did they decide to go after? Bradbury. And if it was DK Metcalf, if it was, if all the receiving core, everybody was going after Bradbury. And Deebo Samuels, remember, he was having a fit for months and talking about Bradbury being not good. And so they went after Bradbury again. And so I think when you look at this football team, there's always going to be what we used to call diamond girls. Diamond girls are the ones that you send the limo to make sure they get to the game because you have them circled because you're going after them. And Bradbury is that guy. Like, he's that guy because teams look at Slay and they respect Slay. They respect Slay's ability to be one of the top 5, top 6 corners in the league. Bradbury's the guy that they go after, including our linebackers and safeties. But in that particular game, it seemed like Seattle really highlighted whoever was lined up in front of Bradbury, they were going to go after. Drew Lock talked about it. If it were one-on-one, we were going at you. And so I just look at this Philadelphia Eagles team. Obviously, they have a lot of holes on defense, and it's not so much Matt Patricia stepping in a defensive coordinator or play caller. I think what he was trying to do was because they couldn't stop the run. Walker was running on them like he was Herschel Walker. And so he tried to put 7, 8 in the box. Then you have to play man. Have to play man on the outside, or you play zone, which leads you to basically cover 3, or some type of soft zone. You had to play man, and we actually got burned in it.
92 yards to Drew Lock.
Yeah.
A 92-yard winning come from behind touchdown drive. And this doesn't go away. It goes away here in the next couple of weeks. And that's the fallacy of it because they're not playing anybody that's really good.
Right.
And I mean, Kyler Murray is fine, but he doesn't have a lot of weapons. And so, or a lot of time normally.
Right.
But in the playoffs, they're going to play like this and have these issues. And Slay doesn't want to play for Patricia, and Patricia doesn't necessarily like Slay. I would question whether Slay's playing for the Eagles at all the rest of the way. At all. And so how does that get resolved to the point where you can actually be in a big game, the 2 weeks before the Super Bowl? I don't know that now that's looking like such a great prospect.
Yeah, it's going to be one that we definitely have to keep our eye on because the Philadelphia Eagles are top 2 teams in the NFC as of right now. San Francisco being up at the top of the food chain, and I think they're the team that people are shooting for. But let's go to the third best team, which they're great at home and awful on the road. The Dallas Cowboys going into Buffalo to play against a team that right now, mentality-wise, they're playing as if it's the playoffs, being the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen has kind of limited the turnovers. They're getting Stephon Diggs, starting to step up. Their wide receiving core starting to make plays. But after the decision of moving Brady to offensive coordinator and pretty much firing Ken Dorsey, the mentality and approach has changed on offense. They're starting to be more of a run-based offense to create play-action pass. And it's worked well for them over the last couple of weeks. When you looked at that Dallas Cowboy game, I think, to me, they exposed their linebacking core for the Dallas Cowboys. They have a linebacker that's 205 pounds, 210 pounds. And I think that was the mentality of Brady of run the football, run the football, run the football, force them to have to play man on the outside with 7-8 in the box, and then attack them with play action pass. Is that what you've seen, Armando?
So Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, outstanding coach.
Yeah.
He was sick all of last week, had a bad week, and then he had a worse Sunday.
Yeah. He came back up.
Yeah. It's like, and then he called the game and had a strategy that was more sick than he was, because he looked at the Buffalo Bills offense and decided, understandably, I got to stop Josh Allen. He's the guy. He is the epicenter of that offense. I can't let him just blow me up. And so the Dallas Cowboys did everything they could to contain Josh Allen. And in doing that, you can't do everything.
Right.
So in doing that, they dared the Buffalo Bills to run the football. And the Bills did. It was like, oh, you're going to let us do this? Okay, we're going to do this. And James Cook from South Florida just went off on them. just went off on them.
Yeah, yeah.
And surprisingly so to the Dallas Cowboys, not surprising to anyone who has any history of seeing James Cook play. Right. I've been waiting for his breakout game, and there it is. Thank you very much, Dan Quinn. So terrible coaching job by Dan Quinn, because it wasn't so much the strategy, Donovan.
Right.
It's that you can have a strategy during the week, and then the battle begins. And, bro, you don't have to be freaking George Washington to realize you're losing. Change, adapt, do something different. And he didn't. And so the Bills just kept pouring it on with the running game.
Well, now let's mention that they were missing their run-stopping defensive tackle. He was out from the game, and he and Lawrence do a wonderful job of keeping double teams off of getting to that second level, and that being their linebackers being able to free flow, and then they can bring safeties down in the box. And that's kind of what's been their calling card so far up until this point. But losing, I shouldn't say losing, but not having their run-stopping defensive tackle in there who's been effective all season really hurt them in this game. But I want to go more to the Buffalo side. And Josh Allen, like, these are games that kind of, I think analysts kind of look at and they go, oh, well, Josh Allen was outstanding. He managed the game great. And it's like, well, did we use that term, game manager? Did he really manage the game, or was this just taking what the defense was giving him? And he was efficient, I will say, in the passing game enough to continue to move the chains, control the game, which led to them actually winning by much bigger margin than what it looked like, because they dominated on both sides of the ball. Dak Prescott didn't play well at all. Offensively, he missed a lot of receivers that were open. They didn't run the football effectively. Offense just really looked out of sync. for 4 quarters, which you didn't expect to see that from the Dallas Cowboys and what we've seen as of late in the last month and a half or so. And it comes to question, if Dallas has to go on the road, will they be effective enough like they've been at home? And I personally, from what I've seen so far, I don't think so. I think this is something that they really have to figure out at this particular point before playoffs start, because their road woes have become kind of the anchor that's holding them back in my eyes.
So let's go down to the train station, shall we?
Mm.
Woo woo! Chugga, 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 chugga. That is the Dak Prescott train winning the MVP, leaving the station. Goodbye, Dak Prescott MVP. No, goodbye. You're done.
I wouldn't say fully. You just the way the season. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to win it, but you can't. I mean, we do have 3 weeks left. We have 3 weeks left. I mean, the 3 or 4 guys that I have in that right now, all have had some games where you begin to question, you start to scratch your head. But go ahead.
So you mentioned Josh Allen. Dude, yeah. That is the first game I've ever seen. You know how they have wide receivers sometimes as decoys? Of course you know. Sometimes running backs are used as decoys. Derrick Henry, oftentimes, when he's not 100%, the Tennessee Titans will use him as a threat while not using him. This is the first time I've seen a quarterback used as the decoy, because the Buffalo Bills used Josh Allen as a threat that they didn't exactly employ very often. He only threw for 94 yards in the game. And he himself, after the game, said, I feel like the kid who didn't do any work in the class project and got an A anyway. And that's because he didn't do a whole lot, and he didn't have to, because they were able to just run the ball. And because Dan Quinn was so deathly afraid of Josh Allen throwing, that they just umbrellaed him, and it was like crazy decoy stuff. And the Bills said, yeah, okay, let's run the football. And they did, and it was beautiful. And now you tell me, who is a more dangerous team in the AFC than the Buffalo Bills? Because I don't know of any. I don't think anybody wants to play the Buffalo Bills.
I got one. I got really 1.5. One being the Baltimore Ravens. I think defensively, from what we've seen from Baltimore, they're one of the top defenses in the league, and they get pressure, and their linebacking core is probably the best linebacking core in football, with Queen and also with Smith, Roquan Smith. Their secondary, I think personally, is probably their weak link. Humphreys hasn't been playing up to the Humphreys that I've seen over the last couple of years, and they're getting pressure enough where the coverage doesn't have to be on top and be on point for so long. So I look at Baltimore, and the way Lamar Jackson is playing, to be honest with you, when we just talked about a little bit of the train leaving for Dak Prescott, I would say Lamar Jackson is probably number 2, 2.5 in the MVP voting, and that behind Brock Purdy. And I would put Christian McCaffrey in there as well with Lamar Jackson. But the reason I say Baltimore is, number one, all of a sudden, the O coordinator coming over from Georgia, that offense starting to evolve, where it's not so much of the read option so strong with Lamar Jackson. Now, they lost their running back to an ACL injury last weekend against Jacksonville, which they still have a stable of running backs. But Odell Beckham is starting to emerge in that offense. Bateman is starting to emerge. We've seen Flowers and what he's been able to do. But the big X factor to me has been Lively. Lively, the young tight end. I think he may have went to FAU or something to that effect. But with Mark Andrews out, Lively has really elevated to be that staple at the tight end position and that comfort level with Lamar Jackson. And so when it comes to comparing the two with Buffalo and how hot they're playing, I would probably say the Baltimore Ravens is the best team to me right now in the AFC.
It's going to be an interesting next 2 weeks because
Yep.
the Ravens play the 49ers, who I think we agree that they're the best team in the NFL right now. Are they?
Correct.
I think?
Correct.
Okay. And then they play the Miami Dolphins. And the last time that they played the Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa threw 6 touchdown passes. So the next 2 weeks will give us a truer measure.
But where was that game?
In Baltimore.
No, I'm talking about the you talking about Baltimore playing Miami at the end or Buffalo.
No, Baltimore. The next 2 games they play San Francisco and Baltimore.
And Tariq should be back.
Yes, I believe he'll be back this week.
Yes.
From based on what I've been told, he was almost there last week and decided
they played the Jets.
Exactly. Dude, we're playing the Jets.
Yeah. One more week won't hurt.
It's the Jets. And so that's what happened. But the point is, we're going to see what the Baltimore Ravens are really made of here the next 2 weeks. And I don't know. They might just destroy the 49ers and the Dolphins, in which case I will get on we're back at the train station. Woo, woo. I will get back on the Ravens, train right there with you. I'll sit in the, in the coal cart or wherever they want to.
I think you might decide to sit in the dining car. You might want to be in the dining car. We get some food, get some beverages.
Dude, I've always wanted to take a long train ride. You know how they have in Europe, they have those long train rides for one reason. Food. Yes, they just feed you. You just sit there, you're watching the thing go by, and it's like food. And yet, one time, my one train experience was in Europe.
Yeah.
It was in the middle of the summer. The train went from Italy to France. The train didn't have air conditioning, and it was like a freaking sauna. It was the worst experience in my life.
What did they give you? Did you get croissants and danishes and?
They gave me a swift kick in the ass because they basically gave you plastic wrapped cold cuts and stuff like that. And I'm like, of course I should have gone first class and I didn't. Dumb by us. And
saving money, Armando, saving money.
Yes, I did spend an hour and a half in the shower with people knocking on the door wanting to get in because I was so hot that I had to take an hour and a half shower. And I just stood there with cold water running because otherwise I would have melted.
So Armando, let's go with the cold aspect since you went with the cold shower. Right now, who are you more disappointed in both conferences, in the AFC and NFC? To me, as far as the AFC is concerned, Jacksonville. I expected more out of Trevor Lawrence, especially by the way that things started when they came back from London. I thought, okay, they're going to start emerging. I just defensively, I give them credit. They're playing well defensively. But offensively, I expected with Ridley, with Ingram, with ETN, with Kirk, even though that he was hurt and didn't play in that Baltimore game, I expected more. And as far as the NFC is concerned, it's hard for me because when I watch these different divisions, but I expected so much more. Really, to be honest with you, with the Philadelphia Eagles, I expected more. Because I felt like, bar injury, the fact that they were healthy last year and they're not missing many guys out this year. I expected more from both sides of the ball, and I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah. So you mentioned how the Jaguars are emerging, and they have emerged. By the way, they've emerged as something of a disappointment. Absolutely. They've
Yes.
lost 3 in a row. Trevor Lawrence now is in the concussion protocol that he went into yesterday. And the NFL percentages of a player going into the concussion protocol and emerging in the same week is like 22%, between 22 and 25%. It
Right.
fluctuates. So there's a 75% chance that Trevor Lawrence isn't going to be out of the concussion protocol in time to play next week.
That's
And
CJ Beathard. CJ Beathard is the next one up. Yep.
woohoo! I'm not degrading CJ Beathard. I'm sure that he's fine, but I know that he's not as good as Trevor Lawrence, who he hasn't taken the next step. Trevor Lawrence is a solid to good quarterback, depending on the day, who was supposed to be and has been expected to be, even by his own admission, elite.
Right.
And he's not elite, or he hasn't been this year. He hasn't taken that step towards elite this year, and that's a disappointment. And in the NFC, yeah, the Eagles raised us to such heights and such expectations, and they're not there. Yeah, I can't disagree with you there.
And so I just look at overall where we are with the NFL right now is concerned. And it's kind of premature, I would say, to pick a Super Bowl, like Super Bowl representatives from the NFC and AFC. But just give me your crystal ball right now of AFC championship contenders and NFC championship contenders.
Well, here's my crystal ball. They better get their act together in Kansas City, because I'm sick and tired of watching Patrick Mahomes sitting on the sideline, like talking to himself and pouting and muttering to himself,
and then showing Taylor Swift in the box.
Not a fan of that either. But and everybody's like dapping up Kadarius Toney, like what he's doing is okay, when what he is doing is 100 miles from being okay. He caused an interception this last week.
Right.
The previous week, he lost them the game, or 2 weeks ago, he lost them the game by lining up offside. And yet they continue to take him under their wings. And it's okay, big fella. You're going to be fine. He's going to be good. He works really hard. Yeah, well, he works really hard, but he's killing you. So I got to ask you, because I know we're going to close the show soon. I need to get you on this. And not get you. I want to hear your opinion. We all saw Sean Payton, right? We all saw Sean Payton undressing Russell Wilson on the sideline on that game on Saturday, I believe it was, after the Denver Broncos looked like they scored and on third down, and then didn't throw a flag, and on fourth down scored again, but this time it was they lined up offside apparently, and now their chance to beat the Lions was out the window. As a former quarterback, you see the head coach undressing the quarterback on the sideline in front of the TV cameras, in front of the entire team, and you think what?
No, I'm not a fan of it. I think Russell handled it professionally, but that's a conversation that me and him are going to have. Because one, I'm trying to look back over that whole series of what led to this conversation that you're having, where now you have to berate me in front of my teammates. Pretty much, that's what it was. It was dogging Russell, and everybody who hates Russell loved every bit of it. But then, from a male standpoint and being a human being, it's like, was that really needed? And that's a conversation that we can have as a unit, talking about what happened, what we did wrong. blah, blah, blah. That's a conversation that we can have behind closed doors. But on national TV, you get in my face. And first of all, I might have walked away. Because what he was doing, he was discussing something with, I don't know if that's the quarterback coach, the OC, whatever it may be. Russell was talking to him about something, and Sean just kind of came out of nowhere. I have a problem with that because here's a guy who's an extension of you and the captain of this football team and the quarterback of this football team. And I can care less about whether people say, well, it's showing that if he can get on Russell like that, he can get on anybody. No, we're grown men. We're grown men. And you're not going to talk to me like that because I don't talk to you that way. And so if it's something that we can discuss and we can get cleaned up, we can talk about it as men. But no, you're not going to berate me on national TV and talk to me that way. No, I was not a fan of it, and the funny thing is this: coaches have a feel of who they can do that with. Like Sean knew he could do that with Russell, and Russell would kind of just take it under the chin. But I don't know what transpired, like give or take on Monday. I don't know if they had that conversation in the locker room after the game. Hey, I'm sorry. I was my emotion, whatever it may be. But it's already out there. And coaches have a feel. But I can guarantee you this: half of the quarterbacks in the NFL would not have took that. And it would not have happened to a higher percentage of quarterbacks. Because I can pinpoint a lot of quarterbacks who probably need that. But coaches won't do that. Coaches will not do that.
So I have a nuanced view of it. I disagree with you that you can't do that to a quarterback. I think he's part of the team. You can definitely do it to the quarterback in private.
That's what I said, in private.
You can even do it in front of the team, but you don't do it in front of the national television audience. You don't do it so that the people on, the Las Vegas Raiders and the people on the Los Angeles Chargers and you don't do it so that all your opponents see that weakness. You do it behind closed doors and it never gets out. And I agree with you that was a failing. It made Sean Payton look bad to me. It didn't make Russell Wilson look bad. First of all, I'm not sure Russell Wilson was at fault for what happened.
Exactly.
Russell Wilson, he doesn't have the red flag to throw to ask for a replay. That's Sean Payton. And if Sean Payton was going, you should hold the ball until I have a chance to see the replay. Brother, yell at your replay coach.
Exactly.
One more thing. I believe that Sean Payton, when they regather, the next time he speaks to the media, he should say, Russell and I have talked, and I was out of line on the sideline. It was a heat of the moment thing, and I shouldn't have done that, and that's on me. And a coach who is a leader doesn't put it on somebody else. He puts it on himself first.
Correct.
And that was a picture of Sean Payton putting it on somebody else other than himself.
100%. But let me go back to you saying you could do that in front of the team. Well, this is my problem with doing it in front of the team. Unless Russell is part of the reason, a high percentage of why things are not going right. Again, that conversation is not to be had and called out in front of the team, because now Russell becomes the security blanket that when things go wrong, you just, it's not me, it's Russell. The coach even called it out in the meeting. Now he becomes the reason or the excuse for a lot of other players that are not doing their job. And that's what happens at the quarterback position is when things aren't going well on offense, their quarterback sucks or he's not good and he hasn't been playing well. And it's like, well, he's only got a second and a half to throw the football. They're not running the football effectively. The receivers aren't running the right routes. They're not catching the football. But it's a little bit more than just the quarterback. And so to call out Russ because you never got in Russell's face or called Russell out by any means when you got on that win streak. So now all of a sudden things start to falter a little bit against the Lions, and you get in Russell's face and you call him out. And even if we're in the team meeting room and you call Russell out, or you throw the highlights of what he did wrong on the film in front of the team, now that's you pinpointing just Russell and not anyone else. And I don't agree with that by any means, because as a coach and a quarterback, we're supposed to have this chemistry where, hey, we can talk about a few things. Hey, I need much more out of you. And I know things aren't kind of flowing the way you, but I need you to get this thing going. If you can't get this thing going, nobody can. But we need to be on the same page. That's the conversation you have with your coach. Not call me out in front of the team, or not get in my face and do all of that on national TV. That's not the way you handle grown men. That's not how you handle grown men.
So what do you think of the stories where Bill Belichick in team meetings, and we're both agreed on the national television thing. You don't do it in front of, the cameras, and you definitely don't do it in front of your opponents. Right. But within the closed doors, like Bill Belichick would be witheringly critical of Tom Brady in those settings. And the understanding was, I'm doing this to Tom because, number one, he can take it. And number two, everybody else will see I'm not playing favorites with Tom. And if I can do it to Tom, I'm definitely being able to do it to you. What do you think of that thinking?
Not a fan, especially for a young Tom Brady. Yeah, I get that, a young Tom Brady. But for an older Tom Brady, that would have never happened. Never happened. And that's the thing, that Russell's not young. Russell is 30, 35, 36 years old. Now, Russell will take it as a grown man, but we're going to have a conversation like grown men. And that's my whole thing is, yes, if we're 20, 24, 25, 26, 27 years old, 30, yeah, we can, okay, I get you, coach. I got you. That's my fault. But 34, 35, 36, and we haven't done, hold on. Listen, I got kids. My dad don't talk to me like that. Listen, man, if it's something you got to say to me, say to me. I've had this situation happen. And I went right into the coach where it's like, look, man, I don't know who you think you talking to, but my father don't talk to me that way. And I'm going to tell you one thing. I for damn sure ain't going to sit here and let you talk to me in front of my teammates like that. You got the wrong person. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. But that's what you did. And so for Russell, he could, like Sean Payton can say, I didn't mean it that way. That's what you just did on national TV. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. That's what you just did. And so if he did it in the team meeting room, same thing. Like there's conversation that we can have as grown men, because as grown men, I can put my hands on you as well. And now we got a real grown-up problem.
Wow.
But that's real. That's real. Like that's why you see a lot of players and coaches like having riff where conversation goes overboard. And when conversation goes overboard, now we take off the coach and player combo. Now we grown men about to handle a situation. And that's what happens when all of a sudden you get a little loose at the lips and you let your authority take over, and then we go ahead and handle business. And that's what happens.
Well, wait a second, Uncle Donovan. You opened the door and I got to be a reporter, and I got to ask you, who did that to you?
Oh, we won't go into that whole situation, but it's happened with a coach. And so it was
coach?
one in which it's happened with a coach where it almost went there, but it didn't, because I kept my professionalism, but I spoke up. And that's the thing is, players will speak up for themselves, because I think what people need to understand, and especially for those who are coaching, need to understand is, hey, we're grown men. Like if there's a conversation that needs to have, we're going to have a grown man conversation. And that's sit down, you sit at your desk or wherever it may be, and we're going to talk about it and try to get it fixed. But if you now overstep those boundaries, then we got issues. We have issues. And it's no different really from a boss to an employee. A boss to an employee is, hey, you know what? You're not holding yourself up to par. Your status is okay. I apologize. I'll get this thing turned around, blah, blah, blah. But now all of a sudden, if you step over the desk and now you're throwing objects and then you're in the face of the individual, okay, now we got a problem. Now we got a problem.
Throwing objects?
Well, no, I'm just using that example. I'm using that
example.
Oh,
okay. All right.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm using that example because that's the whole thing is when you're overstepping those boundaries from a conversation that we're having, then now it's going a whole different direction and it's much more than the subject that we're talking about. Because obviously this is something that has been on your head that you've been waiting to get out in this manner and think that you can get away with it. And so as you think you can get away with it and you're overstepping the boundary, okay, I'm going to put you right back on that other side of the line and let you know this is the wrong one. And so I just think in that situation, I'm with you. Sean Payton has to come out and say, hey, you know what? Russell and I have talked. I think I said a little bit too much at the press conference. You know, I apologize to Russ. That is not the way that you handle situation. Emotionally, I allowed it to get too far. We've kind of hashed things out and we're ready to move on. That's what Sean Payton needs to say.
Because if he doesn't, from the media standpoint, the
Correct.
next step is, okay, what's the underlying reason for this? It didn't look like the moment because Russell didn't do anything. He didn't line up offsides.
Correct.
It wasn't, what did he do? You don't want to tell us? We're going to dig. And it obviously, to the naked eye, the outsider, it looks like there's an underlying reason there.
Correct.
You don't want to talk about it. Russell's not going to talk about it, but you have shown your cards. And
Correct.
Now the question has to be asked, is Russell Wilson going to be around with Sean Payton next year? Unless you kill it right now. Otherwise, that narrative will be there perpetually until we have another answer.
And that's kind of what we're going to keep an eye on going forward. But I really am looking forward to hearing Sean Payton and also Russell because it just won't sit well for grown men. I'm telling you, it's going to come out on one end, you know, if it's going to be Russell that says something or if it's going to be Sean. So make sure you tune in and watch our show as we continue on to give you nothing but fire here at the 5 Spot. Make sure you don't overstep those boundaries before somebody puts those hands on you.